the newest platinum version of Huddle. Thanks so much for showing up, and hope to bring you some good value today. We've got 3 or 4 subjects to cover, and the first one, we're going to cover this. We haven't talked about this subject in a hot minute, and it has to do with fraud. And the reason we're going to cover it is because someone involved in our company was involved, had a close call representing a client who almost closed on a piece of property that was not owned by the purported seller. We represented the buyer in this transaction, and the seller was obviously not represented by us, but represented by another agent and a brokerage. And luckily, the title company, through their normal efforts, were able to kind of flush them out, so to speak, where they just sort of went silent and disappeared. And that caused some other questions to be asked. And we did learn that it was, in fact, not the real seller. And the real seller was as surprised as anyone to learn that their property was being sold. So I decided, because of this, and because this seems to be an ongoing trend, I wanted to talk about it, make sure everybody's aware that this is very much a thing that's going on, and sort of talk about how maybe we can subvert some of this stuff. It's not easy. It's getting more difficult all the time. But there are a few things we do know. One, that if somebody is going to impersonate a seller, it's highly likely. So about 80% of these transactions involve either vacant land. That's the majority of the fraud, is vacant land. The second ones are vacation homes, right? So where people aren't there all the time to monitor, and sometimes months and months can go by without someone being there. And so those are the 2 most common. Those make up over 80% of the, from my research has given me that it makes up over 80% of those fraud claims. So if you do get somebody who's saying, hey, I got a piece of land that I'm trying to sell, and that should be your first clue. If you don't know the person and they're saying they want to sell a piece of vacant land, your radar should go up. Be slightly curious about who this person really is. 2, there is a remoteness aspect to this too. So it's much more difficult to commit these types of things when they're in very populated areas where the neighbors are paying attention. But don't automatically assume that that's going to work out. This one that just happened was it was recreation ground, and from what little I know, there were some neighbors around in the community who knew this person and just made some assumptions that they were ready to sell this piece of property. So ask yourself, how are we? Well, I'll put it in the chat if you have some strategy for this. How are you personally verifying ownership information and verifying who really owns the real estate that you're selling right now? Obviously, if it's a house, we're walking through and they're opening the door, that's a really good indication that they own this house if they answer the door when the doorbell rings. But if it's vacant land, how are you vetting this person? If they meet you in person, if you actually see them, that should take away a pretty large portion of your curiosity. That should provide some confidence. But if they're not local, are you having phone calls? Obviously, you're having a phone call. Are you asking for video phone calls? Because that's also a big one. If somebody says, hey, I live in Colorado and I'm trying to sell a piece of land in Utah, great. Can we get on a video call so I can verify your identity? In my opinion, you need to explicitly state, hey, I need to verify your identity somehow because fraud is a real problem, and we need to make sure before we get started that we verify that you're the real owner. I think that just by itself is a really great way to kick that off. Tara says, I received a call about vacant land, so I checked county records and looked the person up in the white pages and called and talked to the owner. Tara, I think that's not really Tara there, because I don't think the white pages exist. Is that an AI bot that's chatting in place of Tara? Just kidding about that. Called and talked to the owner. So you got the call about the vacant land and went and looked up their phone number and called the phone number and verified that it was a fake person? Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Okay. Really, I mean, that's the kind of due diligence we need. Linda Larson says fluid report, tax report, forewarn, and call to verify the information. So now, the other thing that you should be aware of, that the people who are doing this, what they're doing is primarily looking for vacant land with no liens. And so they're going to, in some way, probably do some research to figure out who this person is, pretend to be them, and maybe try to look up some background information. Linda says it happened often in Iron County. The more rural, the more likely it is that this fraud is taking place. Yeah, so that tracks, Linda, tracks really well. Make sure that, and by the way, a lot of this says, some of the stuff I read, and because even the state of Utah is putting out some documentation about how to maybe subvert some of this fraud, and they're saying work with trusted professionals. Well, guess what? Every instance I knew, there was a real estate agent as a listing agent, and we did get to a closing table once, and we've gotten close multiple times. And these aren't fools necessarily. I don't know them personally, but they definitely don't seem like fools. They just seem like regular people who didn't go that extra mile to verify identity. So just know that they might be able to pull one over on you. But title companies are a really good barrier. Maybe they're our first line of, maybe our second line of defense, maybe the official firewall, and we're the first line of defense here. But don't make assumptions that somebody else has checked out the identity. Make sure that you're doing it yourself. A lot of scammers can pose as wholesalers or pose as agents too, so be aware of that. There are reports of them bringing in, like if you, another common thing that they're doing is they bring two people in on the call. And so it sort of establishes like, hey, this is my brother or my cousin, and they're also in there. And so it helps them establish two people communicating with you. Let's see. Steve says a great source for phone numbers is Forewarn. I totally agree. I have the Forewarn app because I got it from the Park City MLS, and so I've been using it. It is a really good way to verify phone numbers. And so when you do look up these names, they do provide phone numbers that seem to be fairly accurate. And so, if you have the Forewarn app and you look up your own name, I have, and those phone numbers are fairly accurate. Some of them are old, but if you call through all of them, you can verify and ask the question to the right person. So I think that's a really great way to do it as well. Also, we did this a while back. This, obviously, some of what I'm talking about is a repeater, but what I want you to do is check the chat right now and look at that link. That is a marketing piece that we created. We created this, it may have been early this year, maybe last year. I think it was early this year. But this is it's called Property Watch. And we created this email as something that you can send to your clients, kind of as a, hey, heads up, this is a thing that's going on. And so my understanding is the counties have to agree to adopt this service. And it looks like, so we've got Cache, Davis, Grand County, King County, Salt Lake, Summit, Utah, Washington, and Wasatch. So that covers most of our markets. Yeah, send this out and let people know if they have some vacant land, or even, say recreation property or a vacation property that they don't use very much. They should probably put something on there. Steve says it also has some criminal records, properties, and more. Yes, it does have mailing addresses as well to help you track down on Forewarn. Do we have this available as a social media graphic? No, I'm pretty sure we don't, though this is in Resource Center, is something that you can email out right now. And I think you should look it up as Property Watch. Let me just make sure. So that's the official email. Yeah, we designed that email and sent it out with that service. So Kristen, it might be, if you want to send that email out to your client base, I think it's still available and ready to go in there. So you can just send it to your clients. I think it's a pretty good service. But quite frankly, maybe you only have you only know a dozen people with some vacant land and some a vacation around. Maybe that's a phone call and send a link. That might be a really good use of your time too. Can double up on some prospecting there. So yeah, let's see. I hope we covered that topic well enough. The other things you should be aware of, on the initial call, when you're let's say you're talking to somebody about a potential listing, one of the big red flags too is timeliness of the sale. Most of these scammers aren't saying, hey, I want to get the most I can for this property. That's not the conversation. The conversation usually revolves around, yeah, I have some need for this money. Let's get this sold in the next 30 days. There's some urgency to it. They may not act super panicked, but they're letting you know that time is of the essence and they want this done quick. So just be on the alert for that. Check these apps, check the white pages, double check the phone numbers. And quite frankly, normally we might be a little shy about just say, hey, I need to verify that you're really the owner here. Don't be shy about that anymore, because you're in the new world. I need to verify who you really are. So if we could get on a video call and maybe you could text me your ID beforehand, that would be very helpful. And then also, hey, your phone number doesn't match the phone number of record. Is there a reason for that? I think once you get to those points, if it is a scam, they're just going to ghost you and move on to the next one. So I think that's kind of all you have to do there. So send that email out. Definitely worth your time. And there you have it. There you have it. All right. Anybody have anything else to add on that or comments? All right, going once, twice. Sold to Chris Visser in the upper right-hand corner. Hey, we're going to talk about, the main topic today, I thought we would talk about measuring our activities versus results. And I think that is an important topic. But then when I got thinking about it, it's really, if we just start measuring our activities for someone who's been working a while, if you're a brand new agent, then you just start measuring activities. If you've been working in this business for an extended period of time, I think once a year you should do this activity and you should go back. I highly recommend everybody go back and do just sort of a business look back. Okay. If you have to, go ask the staff. And if you haven't done this in a while, go back 12 to 24 months and get every single transaction that you've closed or lead that you've generated that maybe it didn't close, right? But it was a lead that you generated. And I want you to take some time and identify every single sale that you've done and then work it back. Where did this actually come from? Can anybody on the call, and I definitely know that some of you can, tell me where, let's just pick an arbitrary number. And if you have to list different ones, let me see it, because I kind of want to see where everybody's head's at on this. Where did your last 5 transactions come from? What source? So was it an SOI? Was it an open house? Was it farming? Was it an online lead? Did they call on a sign? Did you do a social media post and just comment back? Was it just a past client who called you? Just ask yourself, do I know, or could I easily access this information because I'm tracking it? The reason that that's important is because I think we have a tendency to get into a rut where we're performing all the tasks and we have a really good idea of what we need to do every day. And then when we get busy with sales, a lot of things can happen without taking a real conscious look at what we're doing. But the whole idea of going back 24 months and identifying the source of every single closed deal is so we can really understand how our business is producing us money. If you don't understand how your business is producing money, if you slow down, then you're still going to go back to square one and go, how do I produce a lead? Where should I spend my time? Should I do another open house? Because if you ask me those questions in a vacuum, I could give you, 3 to 5 activities that you should do that have been known to produce leads, but that may not have anything to do with your business and how you produce leads. So it's a really important question to ask yourself, where is my business actually coming from? It may surprise you. Does anybody have any, let's see, who should I call on this one? Who should I call on? Jill Stringham, are you with us? No, Jill Stringham isn't with us. All right, we'll move on to that. But my point is, make sure you understand where your business is coming from. For instance, if you're doing open houses every weekend, and you have done an open house every weekend for 18 months, and you have produced 0 sales from doing open houses, maybe there's something you need to reconsider there, right? Should I still do open houses? Yeah, probably. I think our clients like that service that we provide for them. Or maybe you ask yourself, maybe I'm not saying the right thing at the open house. Or maybe it's my follow-up that's the problem. Maybe I'm getting a lead. Maybe they like me. Maybe it's my follow-up. Conversely, you may be doing open houses and closing 3 or 4 deals a year, and you just don't even recognize that that's where your transactions are coming from. So I'm going to challenge everybody here to do that. Go back, get 12 months at a minimum, 18 to 24 months of all your transactions. Just print them out if you have to, and just write, what is this lead source, and how did I actually capture it? Who called me to deliver it? What open house did I sit that I got this lead source from? Wrap your arms around that. Wrap your arms around that problem so you really understand where you're going and why and how you got there. Okay, because my advice to everybody when it comes to generating business is, pick 3. Jill says, I'm here. I believe you, Jill. I believe you. My advice to everybody is, I think you should have 3, maybe 4 prospecting lead generation activities, and you should do them until you realize they don't work, or you've perfected it and it works really well, or you realize you hate it and you should move on to try something different. But you shouldn't have 10. You should have a small number that you focus on and get really good at. I feel like it used to be in our business that people would talk about, think about where you're weak and focus on your weaknesses. But I think the worm has turned on that. I think we should lean into the things that we do really good and forget about everything else. Because it makes me feel better to not feel guilty about the things I do bad. And maybe that's just a coping mechanism, I don't really know. But anyway, but that ties in closely to kind of the main subject that I wanted to talk about. And on this subject, Will and I converge very well in our opinions. And it is very true. And the quote is, you can't manage what you don't measure. And it's totally true. And let's be real, it's not easy to track all this stuff, but I think it's worth your time. I think you'll have a higher level of comfort if you're tracking what we're doing. And I think you'll have a higher level of confidence that you can repeat the things that make you successful. So I'm going to put it in the chat. What is the one thing that you tracked last week that you think actually made a difference in your business? And if the answer is nothing, then please put nothing as well. What is the one thing that you actually tracked to make your business better? It could be something as simple as, listen, I knew I had to do 5 follow-ups because they were just there. I didn't say do 5 follow-ups. I knew that I had to do them because they were potential clients, so you did them. That's in some way tracking. What tracking have you done? And if the answer is none, please put that in the chat as well. Felicia Lilly says she is tracking internet leads. Very good. Very good. Also, I'll pose this to the Joe Holden has tracked his cholesterol, though I think you misunderstood my request. This has to do with your business related. And if you're talking about your stress levels related to your business, that's understandable, but I don't think that's measured in cholesterol. Chalk digital ads. Kristen is tracking Chalk digital ads. I think the Chalk digital ad thing is a class in and of itself. I think we need to cover. Jill called me today to update me on some of that stuff we talked about. Very interesting subject matter. We can dive into that later. Yeah, I think, so the things that I think you should track. Okay, let's talk about that. Jill is tracking the contacts in Real Scout. I think that's a really worthwhile activity. I think it speaks to using technology to manage this activity. Because if you are continuously using the technology, it's tracking it for you. You're not expending real effort to do it. You're just involved in your business. Chris said, I did all follow up on the reverse prospecting contacts in Real Scout, about 20. I called about 10 people in person. I have sent about 30 to 50 messages on Facebook. I mean, quite frankly, that's a really good use of your time, right? I think, if any kind of activity that you're doing to talk about real estate and talk about real estate is good use of your time. Let's talk about the things that we should track. Tara says, I followed with someone with everyone that attended my open house. That's a really good use of your time as well. But let's think about Tara's is a really good example of the things that we should track. So when we talk about tracking, and I'm going to use Tara's example. So she's doing open houses. And, she's probably going to do, I'm just guessing, Tara, 15 to 20 open houses this year. And she's got a list of all those people that walk through the open house. 15 a month. Oh my God. You're doing 15 open houses a month, Tara? Is that real? Is that a typo?
No, I'm kidding. I probably do about 5.
So you're doing a little more than one a week. So you're going to do, so this is stay unmuted so I can ask you a few questions. Now, you said you're tracking because you followed up with everyone who went through the open house, but is that something that you're going to add to a larger number to see what the effect of those conversations are?
So if they give me their contact information, I will, so my sign-in sheet, I will put the person's name, their phone number, or their email, and then I'll ask them if they're working with an agent. And if they're working with an agent, I request the name of their agent so that I can follow up with their agent to see if they have any interest in my listing. And then I put it on a spreadsheet, sometimes for my seller, so that they know, they can kind of track with what I'm doing. But then it gives me, like, I texted them on this day, I emailed them on this day, I followed up with them on this day. Um, I love spreadsheets. It's bizarre. But and then I'll also put them in Marketing Resource Center. If they don't have an agent, I'll put them as a group that is open house attendees, just separate, like how you can put them in different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then I probably should be better about putting which open house that they attended, but like which listing, and then I just send them on my newsletter, and I just can kind of see their activity of how many emails and stuff that they're opening. That's one thing I love about Marketing Resources is you can get very voyeuristic from the outside and just kind of see who's opening your emails and who's tracking you and stuff. So,
all right, I love that. So this is a really good use of all the data that she's tracking. So in many ways, what she just described is a way that she's tracking her open house activity. So if someone said, "Hey, Tara, tell me about the last 12 months in your open house activity," she would have a really good way to go in and look at how many people came through the open house, how many people are actually prospects for her, how many emails she sent them, how many real conversations she's having. And then she could boil that down to, does that equate to closings? Okay. Now, what she also described though in there was that her open house is a really good service for her seller. And she's delivering, hey, here's the result of the open house that I did for you. And here's the people that are potential buyers that I'm following up with. That's a really good service for your seller. So she's doing two things at once. Now, Tara, have you gone back in time and talked and kind of looked through all that activity to equate that out into closings?
100% have not done that. Probably should need to. I should be better about that. I mean, I have noticed that I have received a couple sales from either being a buyer, an unrepresented buyer, that they didn't buy that house, but they maybe they later on purchased a different home. Um, I think it's getting tougher and tougher because I'm holding some of these open houses and I spend a ton of money on Facebook on ads and that sort of thing. And I'm just not getting the traffic that I was getting, a year ago.
Mhm.
So it's exhausting holding open houses, and because I put a ton of time and effort into my open houses. I'm sure everybody else does. Um, so I don't know if they've been as productive because I get a lot of people that are just browsing
Okay.
as of late. As of late, I don't know. Maybe some other people have had better success. I'd be interested to hear how other people, track
Um,
this.
Thank you. If someone wants to chime in on this too, please do. But this is kind of the perfect example of what I'm talking about. So, um, what we're discussing is if you understand what your efforts are producing to a really good level, and the level is in the last 12 months, I have done X number of open houses that have resulted in X number of leads, and I've closed two, but I'm working on three more. Like, if you can equate that to dollars earned, you will have the exact perspective you need on your level of effort and how much you want to devote to it. So Tara, in this instance, I'm just going to make all this up, by the way. It has nothing to do with Tara's reality. Tara, in this instance, could maybe do some work on this side. Oh, my perspective on the open houses, even though they're slow right now, in the past 12 months have paid off dramatically for me. And that it's just a moment in time that the slowdown is happening and I shouldn't give up on this activity. But she also may learn by digging down into what's going on that my efforts and money have not paid off at all, and I need to reevaluate how I spend my time producing leads. Both of those things could be true and somewhere in between, right? But if we don't know, we could, in Tara's instance, right? Let's assume the worst, zero closings, which she's already said that's not happening. She's getting closings out of this. But let's assume the worst, zero closings. Based on what Tara just told us, and then she learns later on that I've produced zero closings, is this an activity that she should continue? Well, maybe not in its current form. Maybe we still want to have the customer service aspect of the open house that I'm doing, but maybe it has to take on a different form. Maybe I can't justify doing Facebook ads. Or maybe it's something that she also discovers that this is where, I produced 15 leads in 3 months and they all came from open houses. And all these people are talking about real estate. So the opposite could be true. Maybe, of course, I don't know how you do more than 5 a month. So she's leaning into it. So this is a really good example of why tracking this stuff, and maybe you don't need to do it every week. Maybe you don't need to even revisit it every week, but every other month, probably. to really understand where you're going, because this is a really good example of our activities. Tara says, you know, there's great activity that was going on last year, and it's just not the same this year.
I have a question for her.
Do it.
Um, is it your Facebook ads that actually brought the people into the open house? Do you ask what brought them in? Did they find it through Zillow, or was it actually your Facebook ad?
That is something that I think I need to add on to my open house sign-in sheet. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's you know, I've had a lot of just neighbors come through, and I think that that is good and bad, because I've actually received sellers from, you know, that come in, you know, they see the level that Berkshire Hathaway puts into a listing, and, you know, the time that I put into a listing, and it grabs their attention. But you know, I haven't, and I think that that's something worth exploring.
I think to know, like, did they see the sign? Did they see it online? Was it social media? I think that is a good thing to ask.
I get,
Even have a little checkbox on the side of the sign in.
yeah, I think that that's a good idea. Sometimes I get, you know, like, hey, we just followed your signs. And I don't know if anybody else is having that experience where they just follow the signs, but they have like zero intent of purchasing the home. And that's where I don't know, because you're like, Saturdays are a prime day to take other clients out to you know, look at homes, and what is the best use of your time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. But remember, there's an answer to that question. We just haven't, in Tara's case, she just hasn't gone and looked at the data she's already collected and made a conclusion for herself. She's tracked it, but she just hasn't gone back and looked at it in a different way. But there's an answer there, Tara. Is it worth it? I mean, the answer is there. You may discover it is worth it to do it, and you may discover that I only do open houses on Wednesdays and Thursdays now, or whatever day I deem slowest, right? A couple of comments about open houses being a little sluggish. Chris says, last 12 months I have done, I would say, 20 to 30 open houses, and I have polled legitimate 3, what I would call quality leads. The conversation is falling apart each time. My self-evaluation is there was simply unrealistic buyers walking through that caught with reality when they saw the price of a mortgage. He would say, I will also say that we have sold a lot of the houses we have from our houses that we have done the open houses on. So Chris is saying he believes that the open house is producing sales in the form of a showing, and people are using that opportunity to walk through. Is that where you think that's what he's saying? Chris is not in affirmation as a listing agent. So this is the perfect example. And also, I think what we're also talking about here is that the buyer's habits may have changed. The market is, I mean, we all know the market is changing. And I don't know that any of us feels very comfortable saying, this is where the market's going. We feel good about where the market's going, or we feel bad. I don't know that anybody really can say, I feel 100% about, or I feel really confident in my opinion about the direction of the market. Scott says, if you close one deal a year sitting in an open house, it's worth it. All right, there you have it. You know, but it's also a good point in that, you know, how we're spending our time. So maybe you go into the open house and you spend your time, there's some dead time, and you spend your time like Tara does, and maybe she'll go into Resource Center and update her leads, or she'll spend it productively when there's, you know, no one in the house. Like, all that makes sense, right? But until you really evaluate how you're spending your time and what the results are, you shouldn't make assumptions about how successful those activities are. So I'm going to pose this question. what is one activity that you are not tracking that you know that you should be? What is one activity that you are not tracking that you know that you should be? Feel free to throw it in the chat or unmute yourself. I'd love to hear from you. Now, if you use a CRM, throwing this out there, if you use the CRM, it'll do all of that. Well, it'll do a huge portion of your tracking for you so you can really understand that. What is one activity that you are tracking that you are not tracking that you know you should be? I would say following up with a client that bought a house about 5 years ago. I think that's a really good use of your tracking and a really good use of your time. Here's something. This is an easy thing to track. IMO. And we'll go back to Tara because I think her example is excellent. Her experience is a really good example of what we're talking about. So the thing that I think is one of the most important things a realtor can track, right? We all want leads, and leads lead to sales. And we talk about conversion I don't know, maybe that's the next topic. We talk about sales conversion but follow up. How many people are tracking the number of times that they followed up with a client? Because if you're not tracking that, it's highly, and I can say this with confidence because it goes across all sales across the board. Doesn't even matter what you're selling. It takes at a minimum 5 follow-ups, 5 contacts, and some information will tell you 7 before anything happens. So the easiest way to do that, you're putting them in your phone and you can just go back and look at the call history. Have you called this person or texted them 5 times since you met them, or 7 times? That's something that you can easily track, and you should track, because until you've made at least 5 attempts, if not 7 attempts to convert this person into a client, I would argue that you haven't really made a real attempt to do it, because history and statistics and everybody who's studying the sales industry kind of agrees with that. So that's something that you can easily track as well. So to go back on Chris's comment, I would say following up with the clients that bought a house 5 years ago. We just talked about this in sales meeting as part of a customer service experience. And we talk about this all the time, that our industry, and probably the entire sales industry's biggest weakness, is managing the clients after the sale. So we all know that our clients are referral-based business, and that's how we make our livings, the vast majority of us. And every year, the NAR puts out the buyer and seller survey, and that survey will tell you that 80% of our clients, maybe even higher, might be like almost 90% of our clients, say that they are satisfied with their agent and they would use their agent again. And then when it says how many of the people who bought houses used an agent from their last sale, and the number is like 12%. So 80 to 90% of the clients are satisfied and they would use their agent again, but only about 12% use that agent again. So, there's a lot going on there, but I think the most lesson from that is that we are not following up and tracking these people as we go along. One of the things that we should talk about tracking too is your marketing efforts. So think about your marketing efforts. Like, one thing that's easily tracked, we send out an email. We create and automate that email for you every month. That's something to track. It's something to track of, how many people are actually viewing your marketing efforts on social media, right? That's something to track that could be important to you. All right, here's another challenge questions for the group. If your current activity level continues unchanged, what does your business look like 90 days from now? Now, let's mix it up. I would prefer your responses to be in emoji form in the chat. You don't have to put in words, just emojis, and just an emoji chat. And if I don't, Chris has a frowny face. I don't know if that's sad face or frowny face. So if your current, and the question again is, if your current activity levels continue unchanged, what does your business look like 90 days from now? Joe Holden is on fire. I'm not surprised. I mean, you know, I feel like Tara says she's crazy. Kimmy has nothing but stars in the sky. Her future's looking bright. That's good. I love it. The burning heart emoji. I would have never guessed Joe Holden would have put the burning heart emoji in to express his business level in the next 90 days, but I'll take it. I really prefer that direction you're heading, Joe. But think about that. That's something that there should be some self-reflection there. And I think, you know, if you're feeling a bit roller coastery this year for whatever reason, it could be the market, it could be whatever, it could be life is taking hold other than your business and you're just experiencing that. But that is something to think about and consider, okay? Look forward. Does my activity level support the life and the business that I want to create? It's a real easy question. And I think when you ask yourself that, if you ask yourself, is my activity level, is it in support of my ideals and my goals? If the answer is yes, and you're not getting to your ideals and your goals, you need to figure out why, obviously. And the only way to figure that out is to track what you're doing. It's the only way to figure it out. Okay. Now, next question. What activity are you avoiding that would make the biggest impact on your pipeline? And I would tell you that the vast majority of are avoiding prospecting and making calls to people who aren't directly asking us to work with them. But let's hear it from you. What activities are you avoiding that would make the biggest impact on your pipeline? Now, if you can express your thoughts in an emoji, please do. There are some GIFs also available in the chat, and a GIF is always better, in my opinion, than sending actual text when communicating. So there's that as well. Lastly, let's wrap this subject up because I got one more that I want to tackle. I think you should keep this really simple. If you're not tracking anything right now, or in Tara's case, she's really doing the work, but she hasn't looked at it in a way that would help her make a decision about whether or not she wants to do it or not. But again, maybe she doesn't need to make that decision all the time, right? She doesn't need to weekly make the decision about whether or not open houses are a good way for her to spend her time. But, you know, those are things that she's tracking the information. She just needs to look at it a different way. Scott says, I plan on taking at least one former or potential client to lunch a month. Really good use of your time. And think about how easy something like that is to track, right? I mean, that is a single note in your phone about how many deals actually came from my 12 meetings or 12 lunches that I've had, okay? And not to mention, if you know, in Scott's case, if you're tracking, if that's something that you're going to manage and track, well, that's something that you're planning for. That's where you're spending your time to manage your business to head in the direction that you're going. So it feels like this horse might be dead, so we will stop beating it. But if you aren't tracking anything, I would really encourage you to just take out a really simple Excel spreadsheet and write, this is what I want to do, and these are the dates I want to do them, and just fill it in as you go along. Just keep it as simple as possible, or just take notes on your phone, right? Other things that you can do is put in calendar reminders for follow-ups, okay? So if you're, like I said before, if you're tracking follow-ups and you want to make sure that you've done 7 or 8 or whatever your number is for the number of follow-ups, you put in those calendar invites, and then you can go back in time and check those out. Anyway, track. If you want to manage it, you have to track it. And we all should be managing our businesses, which in turn means that we all should be tracking something about our business. So there you have it. That's what I think about that. Now, we don't touch on this subject. We're going to close out. Many of you, not that it's celebrated or even mentioned, but Craig Lelis always did this every year. And in honor of Craig Lelis, we are going to talk about Realtor Safety Month because it's September. And every September, Craig Lelis would remind me that it's Realtor Safety Month and we should talk about this subject. So we're going to go ahead, talk about this subject. So Realtor Safety Month, here's some tips. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see it. Now, there you go. Realtor Safety Month. Oh, come on, expand. All right, tip number 1, keep it light. Show properties before dark. If you are going to be working after hours, advise your associates that you're going to be showing property after hours. One of the trends that I've seen lately is more and more people want to do open houses together, and especially when we hit the winter, when it's going to get dark. You might be doing open houses. I don't know if you're going to do an open house in the dark, but anyway, you're doing them together. And showing properties in the winter can be, not super comfortable. So be aware, turn all those lights on, every single one of them, get there ahead of time and make sure everything's well lit. And there you go. Number 2, checking in. When you have a new client, ask him or her to stop by your office and come and talk to you. Have a meeting. If you do have somebody who's like, hey, I want to look at a house or something, and you're feeling nervous about the interaction, trust your gut. Tell them to meet you at the office, because you don't just show houses to anybody. You have to actually see if they're a serious person, which is good business practices all the way around, but it does promote you being safe out there. Don't be too public. Limit the amount of personal information you share. Consider advertising without using your photograph, home phone number, and or home address in the newspaper. Yeah, don't put your home address on there. That's a bad idea. I don't think anybody does that. But your phone numbers, that's a hard one. And we as a company tell you to, it doesn't look like you're in business if you don't have your photograph online. So that's a little weird. But anyway, you should limit some of your contact information, keep it all professional, and, be aware of that. Open houses, ain't over till it's over. Don't assume that everyone has left the premises at the end of an open house. Have a colleague or a buddy help you check all of the rooms and the backyard prior to locking the doors. Yes, that is a thing. People do hide in there, so be aware of that. Stranger danger. Tell your clients not to show the home by themselves. Alert them that not all agents, buyers, and sellers are who they say they are. Predators comes in all shapes and sizes. That is really good advice, because this does happen. And sometimes it's legitimate and people are like, hey, there's a house that's for sale. Maybe I'll just walk up and see if they'll let me walk through it. Our advice to our sellers is the answer to that question is always no. They need to be either accompanied by an agent or the listing agent and not the seller. So definitely do not have your clients ever let anybody into their house to walk through it unaccompanied with just them supervising. Not a good idea. Make sure you have good doors. That's an interesting tip there, realtors. Thanks for that. Block identity theft. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that. Keep track of colleagues. Yeah, we're not gonna have a checkout board either. That's kind of a weird one. Wear your realtor ID. Always wear visible company identification, such as a badge, and always carry a photo ID on you. These will need to be invaluable for identification if you need to get assistance. When showing a home, I do actually really like this one. When showing a home, always have your prospect walked in front of you. Don't lead them, but rather direct them from a position at least 3 to 4 arm lengths behind you. I think the ladies know in this one, I think you should just stand next to the front door and say, hey, have a good time. And if they go downstairs, just be cautious. Don't be the first one to go down the stairs. Don't let it's a really weird place to be because, on one hand, you can't let them just roam unattended and look in every single cabinet. But on the other hand, you know, we don't need to be detached to the hip either. So be aware when you're showing a house to be next to an exit. Don't follow them down the stairs, that type of thing. Pick up some self-defense skills. Go to the health club. All right. I think this one's pretty commonplace nowadays. Don't take the wheel. Don't drive your clients around. That's an interesting transition that this industry has made. It used to be that you had to, you know, make sure your car was clean and in order to have people drive around with you. And now we've all just sort of collectively said, you know, you're not riding in my car anymore, which I like that. You know, have them follow you. They can meet you wherever they need to go. There's no need for people to be in your car with you anymore. Choose flight over fight. While every real estate agent should take a basic self-defense course, the primary goal in any threatening situation is escape from immediate danger and call for help. FYI. Caller ID on your phone. We talked about that a lot. Forewarn is your friend. If people are asking to see a house and you're the one that's going to go show it to them, if you have the Forewarn app, it's really handy to look that up because you can see if this person has 12 convictions for assault before you go let them into a house. So FYI, that's probably worth our time. And, you know, all our boards should be providing that for us, and a lot of them don't. Hide personal information. We did all that. Have your excuse ready. I think this is a good one. Take time when you arrive at your destination to take out potential dangers. I think if you're showing houses and you have a little time, you know, get out, walk around, make sure you kind of understand where your surroundings are. If at all possible, you know, show houses together. I know that's a hard one to do. But if you do need someone to go with you or you're nervous, ask your friendly local real estate broker. I have gone on multiple showings and appointments when people were feeling a little weirded out. And one of those was I was feeling weirded out too. So we made that meeting short. Let's see, what else? Anybody else have anything they'd like to add for Realtor Safety Month? It's 1:55. I don't want to go over the time because we did last time. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of these. Carry less, don't get parked in, monitor. That's actually a really good one. When showing property and meeting someone, park your car in front of the property rather than in the driveway. That way no one can block your exit. That's a really good tip. Monitor your financial accounts. I mean, we're realtors. We're always staring at that thing. Plan your escape routes. How do we get out of there easily? Rely on good neighbors. Be prepared. Beware of fishers, scams. I'm going to go ahead and just attach this handy dandy thing to our chat so you can have it. Hold on. How do I unshare there? Scott reaffirms, use Forewarn, free to Park City board members. If you don't have it, call someone who does. Yeah, Forewarn, and now that I have it, it seems as though that's almost feels like a necessity now that I've had it for a short period of time. Linda in the chat is advocating for bow staff and nunchuck skills. You know, I'm going to have to go ahead and, because it's Realtor Safety Month, agree with that, though I think the bow staff would be very uncomfortable to carry around a showing. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and attach this in the chat. Oh, where did my thing go? I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat for you to have it. And hold on one second, y'all. Does anybody have anything else to add before we call it a day? Steve says, is Forewarn included in the Park City MLS fees? Yes, it is. I had to become a secondary member of it. That's why I have it. Also, I would highly encourage all of you to reach out to your local board and make them feel guilty that they aren't providing it to you. And maybe they have another alternative method that you aren't aware of. And then if you aren't aware of it, you should also blame them for not making you aware of it. So anyway, take the time to do that. Thanks so much for showing up for Huddle today. And you're going to have a great weekend. And unfortunately, this is the last RSL game of the season because they are not very good. So if you're there, shoot me a text. Good to see you all.